Welcome to New York City Visions. I'm your host and fellow New Yorker, Herb Malsman. Our recording date today is Saturday, July 14th, 2010. We're in the Arsenal. I kind of know folks that have been listening to these pieces here in New York City for 2012 kind of already know that I'm a former employee of New York City Parks and Recreation. I was the first media liaison person for recreation. It was in the mid-'80s, and then I left, and I'm back, and I've spent Lita Meredith a couple of weeks ago, a piece she did on food and healthy eating. We were here for that, and of course we got to spend a few moments with Parks Commissioner Adrian Benepe, who after 37 some odd years is moving on to a national parks project. So Adrian is leaving after really starting out on the ground and becoming Parks Commissioner, so he was on with us. It is Saturday, July 14th, 2012, and we're hot on the heels, we're just beyond the third Friday the 13th of 2012. For the first time since 1980 something, I think, something like that. There were three, each Friday the 13th of 2012, there'll be no more this year, came exactly 13 weeks apart. And it won't happen again until 2040. So that's a little history on Friday the 13th. I was thinking, I got an email for Arts and Antiquities, photographs that are here at the Arsenal on the second floor in the kind of like a gathering room here. I kind of thought there was going to be a reception here and what was happening. That was what I got in the email, but I'm by myself. And the event is Parkcentric Photographs from the Museum of the City of New York, 1890 through the year I was born, 1940. I'm going to read a plaque on the wall, the Arsenal Building, Central Park, New York, the first home of the American Museum of Natural History from 1869 to 1877. This tablet is erected by direction of the Board of Trustees of the American Museum, January 13th, 1929. So that is the connection between the American Museum of Natural History and the Arsenal. We're going to go through some of these pictures. I'm looking for a starting place over here. Let's start over here. The Washington Arch, Washington Square Park, Fifth Avenue, Manhattan, 1903, Byron Company. I guess it was built by the Byron Company in 1827. Since its creation in 1827, Washington Square Park has undergone many design changes and transformations. We were at a piece I did a month or so ago, Adopt-A-Palooza, happened at Washington Square Park, and of course the famous arch. That's right at the tip of Fifth Avenue. Fifth Avenue doesn't run all the way downtown. It begins at Washington Square Park, and that's at 14th Street and 14th Street and Fifth Avenue. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. Okay, just looking at some of these pictures over here. The Rotunda, Henry Hudson Parkway at West 79th Street, Riverside Park, Manhattan. Romanesque, I guess, but with a distinctly modern twist. The arch Riverside Rotunda typifies the pure geometry and streamlined contours used in the expansion of Riverside Park and creation of the Henry Hudson Parkway design project. And of course, the Riverside Drive extension, there's a picture of some of the old black and whites are really great. You've got Grant's Tomb, scenic overlook, peristyle, Riverside Park at 22nd Street. Grant's Tomb is in New York City. We'll kind of move along. Again, there's nobody to interview here. I was brought up here and guided up here by a parks ranger, who has left the gentleman downstairs where I came in through the basement, and he's because if you look over here, looking straight into the conference rooms, of course it's Saturday, nobody's here. None of the offices are here, and that would be where Commissioner Benepe's office is. So I'm being it's kind of like an escort up here, so I'm feeling kind of safe. Okay, the Weekend of Parks, a little sign of Weekend of Parks. The acknowledgments, it's actually, I think it's called Arts and Antiquities, Parkcentric Arts and Antiquities. And let's give the acknowledgments here. Again, I'm all by myself. I expected other people to be up here. It is today and tomorrow from 10 a.m. to 4. is the actual times for this. And I'm the only person who showed up. It's 10:30 right now. Let's give you the acknowledgments. New York City Parks and Recreation, Jonathan Kuhn, exhibition curator, Jennifer Lancis, public arts art coordinator, Larry Scott Blackmon, Deputy Commissioner, and of course, Adrian Benby, Commissioner, Museum of the City of New York's Sean Cochran, Curator of Prints and Photographs, Kevin D. Bernardi, Graphic Designer, Sarah Henry, Deputy Director and Chief Curator, Susan Henshaw-Jones, President and Director. And a special acknowledgement goes to Michelle Herman, editor. Moving along, the Arsenal, here's the bill. Let's kind of read this out. The Arsenal, Central Park, Manhattan, circa 1915, Byron Company collection of the Museum of the City of New York. You are here. Built as a state arsenal. This was an arsenal here. The building served only briefly as a munitions storehouse. With Central Park opening soon after, the building was enlisted for multiple uses, including home to the Board of Commissioners of Central Park, the Manhattan Parks Department Central Office, a Natural History Museum, an art gallery, and weather station. Since 1934, it has been unified headquarters of the New York City Parks Department. At the time of this photo, the building, draped in beautiful but destructive ivory, was in a dilapidated condition and housed a restaurant. The Parks Department having decamped temporarily in 1913, my mother's birth year, to the new municipal building downtown. The double entranceway seen here, and of course the ivy just covers everything, and people walking along in the early 1900s, 1915, and it's just it's an amazing photograph. Okay, where was I? The double entryway seen here was altered during a renovation from 1934 to 36, though the central sculpture at the head of the stairs, a three-dimensional state seal, was later incorporated into a lower level entrance to the right. Notice one of the menagerie outbuildings erected during the Victorian era. Let me just step outside of here and talk about the menagerie buildings. And if you head west, I'm looking at left, I'm looking right at Fifth Avenue right now. That's East. Fifth Avenue, for folks who haven't been to Manhattan, New York City, Fifth Avenue separates East from West. So when I look out the west side window over here, I go into the stairwell right here. There's an old merry-go-round horse out here, because there's a great merry-go-round here, and I'm looking right at the seals. We're looking right into the zoo area right here, and I kind of remember as a kid the animals here, the big cats, and they were in little cages and little concrete things. Couldn't have been very homey for the animals, and I know things have improved greatly for animals since those days. Okay, moving along again, I think I mentioned originally a few months ago when I started doing the piece, just now I realized I wasn't recording, and I don't know if I mentioned it on this one or the last one, but I worked with Parks and Recreation in the 80s. I was its first media liaison, so I spent a lot of time in this building. Okay, Luna Park, Coney Island. I'm wearing my Coney Island Forever shirt today, T-shirt. Luna Park at Night, Coney Island, Brooklyn, 1906. Samuel L. Gott Show, a collection of the Museum of the City of New York. Before there was Las Vegas, Coney Island provided the masses with pleasure palaces and artifice to stir the imagination and fleece the wallets. Wow, what's that all about, fleece the wallets? I don't think they're fleecing the wallets quite as effectively as Las Vegas does. I kind of don't get that very much. I have a little problem connecting the two with fleecing the wallets. This seaside people's playground included several amusement parks at the turn of the 20th century that rivaled the best of the world has ever known. The opulent centerpiece of Luna Park, designed by Charles I.D. Loof, was renowned for its fanciful hybrid architecture, illuminated at night by thousands of electrical lamps. It stood from 1903 to 1944. In 1938, the New York City Parks Department assumed jurisdiction over Coney Island, its beachfront, boardwalk, and concessions. And while we're talking about boardwalk, let me air out a little problem I have. Again, I'm wearing the Coney Island shirt. I was hoping to see somebody here today from Arts and Antiquities to ask if it's a good idea to make the boardwalk, plus the boardwalk at Coney Island, turn them into concrete or plastic rather than it's not a conch walk and it's not a plastic walk. It's a boardwalk. And aren't they kind of taking away from the magic of the boardwalk by deciding to go with plastic and concrete in certain sections. Folks, an outcry about it. They're trying to get this thing approved before it goes forward. The Parks Department is just kind of going forward with it, and they're trying to get it scrutinized before it happens. Okay, moving along. Night scene at Central Park. I'm just kind of. I did want to cover Coney Island, which I did. Let's kind of move along. As we walk along, we're passing a men's room, and it says the Septagon, Septagon. It's the men's room, but it's the Septagon, so it can't be serving a dual purpose, or perhaps it was whatever the Septagon was at one time. It's now a men's room. We're looking at Cleopatra's Needle and an unidentified man with horses at Eagle Vale Arch near West 77th Street. I'm really not used to talking all this by myself. I hope you folks don't get tired and sick of my voice. I'm just not used to doing this all by myself. But okay, it's a good thing to be doing, I guess, to be doing this by myself. Okay, a Fifth Avenue bus along Washington Square Park, and I want to kind of move along a little bit because this gentleman, although it's nice and air conditioned up here, and outside was supposed to be very hot. I don't think it's going to get very hot. There's overcast. I think we're going to get some rain here today. So he's with me, and hey, look, I hope he's enjoying it the way I am. I'm looking at the pictures of workhorses clearing snow from paths, Central Park, Manhattan, circa 1898, and then a maintenance worker, Central Park, Manhattan, and men put on ice skates, Van Cortlandt Park, the Bronx. These guys are all dressed up in the bowler hats and the full suits. I mean, they've got their coats on, the full suits, and they're putting on ice skates. Again, circa 1898, and I guess they got one guy smoking a cigar and putting on skates, and I guess they're going to skate just like that in suits and overcoats. And here are a couple of kids playing in the snow. Recent vision of Jollity, children and dogs sledding Central Park, 1896. Wow, 1896. Look at this. There's a kid, the young boy, has got the dog, and this girl is on a sled and she's being pulled by this looks like a little, one of these little, I'll think of it in a little while, Jack Russell, like Eddie from Frasier, being pulled, and this kid with a beautiful hat. And there's a skier, Cypress Hill, Central Park, Manhattan. There are skiers getting ready to go. Boy, the snow is just there. And children play at Fountain, Madison Square Park, Manhattan, 1901. They're playing around this water fountain at Madison Square Park. And there are some guys, a bocce ball, First Street Park, Houston Street, and First Aid. Folks, if you come to New York City and you say Houston Street, you're going to let them know right away you're from out of town. It's Houston Street, spelled the same way, but it's Houston Street. So they're playing bocce ball, and it's circa 1940. Wow, the year I was born. This is what some guys were doing in 1940 while Mom was having me. So that's what's going on. Okay, a boys model boat sailing, conservatory water, Central Park in 1920. 1920. And the Mothers and Children, Union Square Park, Manhattan. It's circa, doesn't say what it says 1807, but it can't be 1807, and I don't see a date for this photograph. This photograph, Girls Parade, Arbor Day, Tompkins Square Park, 1904. And these are all this is arts and antiquities. These are photographs that are going to be on display here, and I'm not sure of when this exhibit closes, but these are all shots that, again, Penn Parkcentric, photographs from the Museum of the City of New York, 1890 through my birth year, 1940. Okay, let's see what else we have. I don't want to keep this gentleman too long, so I've got to kind of move along. And let's see, if a boy steering canoe on the lake, Central Park, Manhattan, circa 1920, unidentified photographer. We don't know who the photographer was, but this guy shows good time here. And you've got Children's Farm Garden, DeWitt Clinton Park, Manhattan, 1902 circa. And looking at some of these other pictures, Lookout Point, Fort Washington Park, Manhattan, 1895. Okay, let me see what we have. I'm looking for something to chat about here. Here's some boys playing at North End Ravine, Central Park, Manhattan, 1937. In designing Central Park, Frederick Law Olmsted was the designer of the park, along with Carol Calvert, C-A-L-V-E-R-T, V-A-U-X, created 3 woodland areas, one to the south, now the Hallett Bird Sanctuary, the Central Ramble, and the North Woods. The last contains a ravine and loch which is fed by the pool on the west side and descends through the Huddlestone Arch leading to the meet. Though this vista was compromised by the Alaska Rink built in 1966. The arrangement of boulders along the stream and several small waterfalls simulate the type of landscape one might find in the Adirondacks. So there are these kids playing along the. It's such a simple, where New York City is experiencing a huge bump in violent crime, a lot of shootings, a lot of them this month so far. And as I was reading in New York City, and I love my city and I love my hometown where I was born and raised in Brooklyn. Supposedly here in the city anyway, July is the deadliest month of the year for shootings, and Saturdays are the deadliest day of the week, and between 9 and 10 p.m. that's where most of it happens. So right now, this was a far simpler time. There was crime back then, but these folks were out enjoying it, and I'm certain it isn't as deadly then as it seems to be now. Again, I love this city, but what's going on? Here we have a polar bear bathing on a hot day, Central Park Zoo, Manhattan, 1938. A massive polar bear attempts to stay cool in confinement on a hot summer day, maybe even July. Even the most naturalistic zoo setting cannot begin to simulate the expansive range of a polar bear in its natural habitat. And it's the most crowded attraction in the park and frequented by all classes of society. When I was working at Parks Department in the 80s, the polar bear here was Scandy, S-K-A-N-D-Y. And a gentleman, I guess he and his friends were out partying one evening. They got into the park, and they got into the zoo, and this guy got beyond the fence and stuck his hand in the cage, in the polar bear habitat, and Scandy promptly took his arm off. He tore his arm off through the cage. Nothing happened to the bear. I mean, all this bear was doing was kind of protecting his spot. I mean, that was his territory, and that's what happened. Okay, Carnival Games, Coney Island. Well, let's do a little Coney Island. We seem to be in Coney Island right now. Let's do that. Carnival Games, Coney Island, Brooklyn, 1896. Generations of New Yorkers have flocked to Coney Island for its seaside amusements, boardwalk, and carnival games and concessions. The Parks Department assumed jurisdiction over the beaches and boardwalk in 1938 and upgraded the public facilities, but also sought to eliminate the more tawdry activities that many found gave the place its special allure. So there were tawdry things happening, but still not as fleecing as Las Vegas as it can be. We're back at Coney Island right now. Bicyclists at Salvation Army meeting Coney Island, Brooklyn, 1897. Founded in Great Britain in 1865, the Salvation Army, a Christian ministry church, was imported to the United States in 1880. Group outings to the seaside were common both for the healthful effects and as an opportunity to spread its mission. Here a group of congregants, I'm sorry, I'm just not used to doing all this. I'm just somebody reading it out and me asking questions. This is a little unusual. Here a group of congregants on a bicycle outing assembled at Coney Island. In the year of this picture, the war cry, the official publication of the Salvation Army, commented, there are two Coney Islands. There is the Coney Island of the day, the island of sunset, and the island of moonlight, of the shadows, of the darkness. It was Coney Island's debauchery that the soldiers sought to expel. So the Salvation Army came to Coney Island to try to bring bring peace and harmony to Coney Island in the evening. So that was their plan. I guess it worked out. I don't know. We're looking at Far Rockaway Beach. We're looking at, okay, let's do a water baseball. Brighton Beach, Brooklyn. Brighton Beach, in my days, it was Jewish and Italian and Irish. And now it has taken on a Russian, there's a great Russian population in Brighton Beach. And so Brighton Beach is changing in that respect. But it sure looks great, too. Let's look. This is 1922, the International Newsreel, a collection of the Museum of the City in New York. Girls take to the water at Brighton Beach for a spirited game of water baseball in the stock image of a photo news agency. Water baseball. I wonder if they'll explain what water baseball is. The beach, okay, well, I'm not seeing it. The beach was named in 1878 after England's popular seaside resort. Brighton Beach name, oh, Brighton, okay, there you go. I've been to Brighton in England. I've been to Brighton. Later, the Hotel Brighton, the Ocean Hotel, the Brighton Beach Racetrack, and the Brighton Beach Bath, and the Brighton Beach Baths built on the site of a former amusement park attracted visitors to a middle-class resort destination east of the more boisterous West Brighton and Coney Island amusement areas. Improved subway express access led to a permanent year-round residential development. The city acquired the beach again, sorry for the stumbling, the city acquired the beachfront property in 1946 and assigned it to the Parks Department in 1950. And have I said recently, you're listening to New York City Visions. I'm your host and fellow New Yorker, Herb Malsman. We're spending a little time talking about Brooklyn stuff. And again, folks, if you don't know the history of Brooklyn, Brooklyn at one time was its own city. It is still the fourth largest city in America. It was a city unto itself. It was not part of Manhattan. Brooklyn is the first suburb in America. What they did is the overcrowding that was happening in Manhattan, they wanted to kind of have people expand out, so they built the Brooklyn Bridge. Rather than taking a boat to Brooklyn, you could take the bridge, you could walk over, ride over, bike over, and go into Brooklyn. So that was the first suburb in America, and Brooklyn is just huge, and it became part of New York City by a vote. And I don't have the year down, but it happened by a vote. And it only won by 200 votes. So Brooklyn was not happy being part of New York. They wanted to continue being its own city. David A. Booty was the mayor at the time, perhaps the last one. They named the junior high school after him. The junior high school in Brooklyn, still another school. I didn't graduate, so I let that slip. Let's. I've gotten to the description of Parkcentric, right? And I'm still looking for folks to come in, and I don't see anybody. I know my email said today at the reception. I don't see anybody. Well, we're getting a private look at Parkcentric. Parkcentric, photographs from the Museum of the City of New York, 1890 through 1940. This exhibition celebrates two great civic institutions, the New York City Park System and the Museum of the City of New York. The museum, whose first home was in a park at Gracie Mansion, which is the mayor's residence, not Gracie Mansion, but Mayor Bloomberg, the current mayor, does not live at Gracie Mansion. He's got a condo somewhere, but he doesn't stay at Gracie Mansion. Is dedicated to examining the museum. I'm going to read that again. The museum, whose first home was in the park at Gracie Mansion, is dedicated to examining the city from all angles. Its photographic collection alone has more than 300,000 images, which provide an extraordinary portal on the past, helping to define New Yorkers' self-image. The pictures in this show focus on a critical period in the park system, from the social reform movement to the WPA, the Work Progress Administration, work something or other. And my dad was with the WPA, so folks that weren't working back then, they were put to work on city projects and that sort of thing. They were the workforce, and that's what my dad did. He worked with WPA. He was a laborer. From the social reform movement to the WPA era on the cusp of World War II. They were selected both for the visual power and for their revealing depictions of the beauty, variety, and vitality of the city's parks. This was a time of startling growth and modernization. The population soared from 2.5 million to 7.5 million people, and the city came into its own, assuming the contours that remain surprisingly recognizable today. The photographers represented here bore witness to this ascendant city and the complex interplay of its rapidly expanding population of parks, today comprising nearly 15% of the metropolis. The burgeoning skyline of modern skyscrapers framed all the parks, including City Hall, Madison Square. And if I'm not mistaken, Madison Square is where the original Madison Square Garden was. I believe that's true. This is the one that's around now. I believe it's the third one. There was one on 50th and 8th Avenue, and now it's at 34th Street and 8th Avenue. Okay, where was I? The burgeoning skyline. Okay, I've gone through that. I'll do that again. The burgeoning skyline of modern skyscrapers framed all the parks, including City Hall, Madison Square, and Central Park, helping define these critical oases in increasingly dense neighborhoods. Social service groups in the city responded to the immense needs created by the waves of new immigrants. The Parks Department created new parks, built its first playground, and launched its recreation division to promote health and citizenship. From the outset, the Museum of the City of New York supported talented photographers in their zeal to document the city's evolution, mounting early solo shows by Berenice Abbott, Samuel Gottscho, and John Albach. Among others, the self-taught Gottscho produced images of striking formal precision, whether his subject was architecture or nature. Abbott, influenced by Eugene Etget and Man Ray in Paris, caught the tension between old and new with honesty and clarity. So this is basically what we're looking at. I'll just finish up by saying the museum's photographic collection includes images of more than 50 parks, 24 of which are seen here. Unlike the often staged compositions of official pictures, these have an informality that captures the textures of New York life. These are just the folks playing in the park. Here's one building a pyramid, a bunch of kids over here. Boy, what is it? PS 105 Manhattan. This is PS 105, all the schools, all the public schools. Some have names now, I guess Kennedy High and Martin Luther King Public School and that sort of thing. But there was one time there was all numbers. And here's a teacher in great shape and some blurry photos, some of the faces are blurry. And these kids, they're PS 105 Manhattan Vacation Playgrounds, Bronx Park, August 19th, 1902. 1902, look at these kids, and this guy must have about 7 kids on him. He's holding some kids up, his arms outstretched, and he's holding some kids up, and there's some kids, a couple of kids standing on the shoulders and one wrapped around his waist, and these kids are just having a great time. And wow. Vacation playgrounds provided an opportunity for tens of thousands of working-class children from densely packed tenement districts to spend active recreational time in a countrified setting without leaving the city limits. That's what's great about New York City. You have all the concrete in the buildings and the Empire State Building and what's going on, and in the midst of it all, you've got parks. And it may sound a little corny, but as an old Parks and Recreation employee, I really feel that Parks and Recreation is New York City's most valuable asset. It's recreation, it's park, it's getting out in the day and enjoying the day. Okay, you've got some children to play at Wright Mansion, J. Hood Wright Park. Wow, look at this, look at it, and it looks like I'm looking at maybe Manhattan Bridge or I don't know what bridge I'm looking at. Let me see if it says over here. I'm not seeing a bridge, and I'm actually, it was demolished. No, it's the eastern pier of the George Washington Bridge, completed the previous year, as if all ways were yielding to the modern city. The house appears on a map, this house being the Wright Mansion at J. Hood Wright Park. The house appears on a map as early as 1860 and was built for a previous property owner, Augustus F. Smith. It was demolished in 1934. And the picture we're looking at was the first. It was completed in 1933, and you're looking at the eastern pier of the George Washington Bridge. Folks, if you're anywhere in New York City, and I'm not seeing when this ends. I'm sure it's going to be here for a while. I'm looking at it's June 14th, which is today. Actually, no, July 14th. Actually, what are we? You're on July 14th. On June 14th, it says June 14th. So I guess it's been up for a while. And it'll be here through August 30th, 2012 at the Arsenal Gallery in Central Park. And so you can go into nyc.gov/parks and you'll get some information on this. So through August 30th, 2012, you can come and see this because there's no way you can describe. You really have to see these wonderful photographs here. Oh my goodness. Okay. Do I hear somebody else? I don't hear anybody else. I guess I'm hearing is two. Welcome to New York City Visions. I'm your host and fellow New Yorker, Herb Malzman. Our recording date today is Saturday, July 14th, 2010. We're in the Arsenal. I kind of know folks that have been listening to these pieces here in New York City for 2012 kind of already know that I'm a former employee of New York City Parks and Recreation. I was the first media liaison person for recreation. It was in the mid-'80s, and then I left, and I'm back, and I've spent Lita Meredith a couple of weeks ago, a piece she did on food and healthy eating. We were here for that, and of course we got to spend a few moments with Parks Commissioner Adrian Benepe, who after 37 some odd years is moving on to a national, the Washington Arch, Washington Square Park, Fifth Avenue, Manhattan, 1903 Byron Company. I guess it was built by the Byron Company. In 1827, since its creation in 1827, Washington Square Park has undergone many design changes and transformations. We were at a piece I did a month or so ago, Adopt-A-Palooza, happened at Washington Square Park, and of course the famous arch. That's right at the tip of Fifth Avenue. Fifth Avenue doesn't run all the way downtown. It begins at Washington Square Park, and that's at 14th Street and 14th Street and Fifth Avenue. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. Okay, just looking at some of these pictures over here. The Rotunda, Henry Hudson Parkway at West 79th Street, Riverside Park, Manhattan. Romanesque photographs that are here at the Arsenal on the second floor, and the kind of like a gathering room here. I kind of thought there was going to be a reception here and what was happening. That was what I got in the email, but I'm by myself. And the event is Parkcentric Photographs from the Museum of the City of New York, 1890 through the year I was born, 1940. I'm going to read a plaque on the wall, the Arsenal Building, Central Park, New York, the first home of the American Museum of Natural History from 1869 to 1877. This tablet is erected by direction of the Board of Trustees of the American Museum, January 13th, 1929. So that is the connection between the American Museum of Natural History and the Arsenal. We're going to go through some of these pictures. I'm looking for a starting place over here. Let's start over here. Romanesque, I guess, but with a distinctly modern twist. The arch Riverside Rotunda typifies the pure geometry and streamlined contours used in the expansion of Riverside Park and creation of the Henry Hudson Parkway design project. And of course, the Riverside Drive extension, there's a picture of some of the old black and whites are really great. You've got Grant's Tomb, scenic overlook, peristyle Riverside Park at 122nd Street. Grant's Tomb is in New York City. We'll kind of move along. Again, there's nobody to interview here. I was brought up here and guided up here by a parks ranger, who has left the gentleman downstairs where I came in through the basement. Parks a project. So Adrian is leaving after really starting out on the ground and becoming Parks Commissioner. So he was on with us. It is Saturday, July 14th, 2012. And we're hot on the heels, we're just beyond the third, Friday the 13th of 2012. For the first time since 1980 something, I think, something like that. There were three, each Friday the 13th of 2012, there'll be no more this year, came exactly 13 weeks apart. And it won't happen again until 2040. So that's a little history on Friday the 13th. I was thinking, I got an email for Arts and